Hey Joe, how are you today?
Good.
So I have the internet weather for this week, and we'll start with the top 10 most pro ports. This week, there's not many changes from the usual, from the norm. It's all the same top ports that are being scanned as usual. This is by volume. I think last time John talked about port 8089, which is an alternate web port. So what I decided to do is look at port 5555 TCP. This is something that we've covered quite a bit in the past. So let's just see, what the activity looks like today based on previous activity.
All right.
So it looks like, this port came on our radar probably sometime in January of 2018. This is going back almost 3 years, 900 days of activity against this port. This is just scan probe activity. If you just look at like the last 30 days, which is just the last few lines there, you'll see it's pretty similar to what it has always been. But just looking across 3 years, it's pretty amazing to see the change. So just to help you understand, I decided to look at this port in our Honeypot data and just quantify what's happening there. And so surprisingly, RDP is actually making up about 50% of the requests that we see on this port, specifically RDP brute forcing. So you see what I did here in that corner is took a look at the top usernames that we're observing hitting this honeypot. They're a little bit unusual, like perhaps the scanner or the brute forcer that the adversaries are using is not configured correctly. Perhaps this is just a way to test for honeypots. I'm not sure, but it is kind of strange to see usernames like that.
Yeah, so it's almost like administrator truncated to that
Yes.
R character.
Yes, exactly.
The test, maybe not that. I guess some tools probably could deliver with a default username of test, maybe an internal test.
Exactly.
But then hello, I don't think we see a username of hello very often.
No, I don't think so. You're right. So I'm thinking that this could be, when the adversary is scanning, he's probably looking for usernames that are, legitimate, but he doesn't want to give those up yet. So he's just testing with something silly.
Just
the first
to fill
time
out that string.
Just to see if anything comes back. Is the honeypot? Is this a honeypot? Is this a real RDP server? And I'm pretty sure some very common security tools do the same thing.
Okay.
So they just send like a value like this. So, but it is interesting to see the variation and how that looks like.
Okay.
So so that's one of the protocols. Next, let's move on to HTTP. So this is another protocol we see on this. This one is actually related to a very, very old CVE. There's a couple of different URLs that we're seeing, and it's a well-known exploit. I think it's TR064 or TR069 is the protocol that's running on some types of it's not IoT devices, but it's more like routers. So here's just an example. This is a very recent example of malware being distributed. I think this particular sample is already been analyzed by multiple different security researchers. So this is well known as well. The next thing, now we're getting into these. Some people connect to this port and do nothing. And then we have as well XMR, which is the cryptocurrency mining. So some time ago, it was discovered that there's different vulnerabilities, but there's also these mining pools that are out there that you can connect to and either donate Bitcoin or maybe take or contribute. So we see some amount of scanning activity for this cryptocurrency mining servers on this port as well. Finally, this is a well-known port for the Android debug bridge. So you could see there's a couple of flows where somebody is trying to exercise this ADB protocol with the honeypot, but it does not make the majority of what's happening. A lot of it is just trying to see what kind of a web server there is, and some of it is this old exploit, which has been attributed to things like Mirai and variants of Mirai.
So that was interesting to sort of investigate what potential uses are of a sort of non-standard use of a port.
And now we move on to the top 10 most sources probing. So in the top spot is port 445 TCP. And actually something new, we didn't do the internet weather last week, but from last week, this port 65529 TCP is actually gone up, and it's actually gone up significantly from the week before. The week before it had gone up many places, because that's not a port we usually see. So I decided to take a deeper look at that as well and see what's going on. Is there a new botnet? Is there a new type of device that might be infected, a new type of exploit or vulnerability? So let's dive in. So first, this is back from April 23rd, just the last 900 days of activity on this port. And you can actually see here the rise of WannaCry.
Right.
So right up until here, there was an old Windows Trojan backdoor worm that was scanning and trying to infect Windows devices.
Conficker, right?
Conficker, yes, that's right. And you see this little spike right here. That spike is the weekend that everyone found out about WannaCry, and they took action and it really went down. But after that weekend, activity actually got worse and worse and worse.
Yeah.
And you could see how it kind of petered out or whatever. And it reached a peak and started going down. So what do you think happened since then? Are we worse, better, or the same?
I'm going to say we are worse.
We are a little bit better. Well, that's a good thing.
Yeah.
It's good to be wrong in that context. So, the activity is still, look at it. It is huge. We're technically still worse than we've been 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Lots of infected devices out there that are doing scanning.
Interesting.
So hopefully this will continue going down. I'm sure that next week things will stabilize, and I'm hopeful that it will keep going down. So now let's refocus on this brand new port, 65529 TCP. So you could see this is just 30 days of activity. And in the last 30 days, we never knew about this port. Nobody was really scanning for it, except here it looks like maybe the 22nd or 23rd or in the middle there. Its activity started. All of a sudden, a bunch of devices started looking for this, and you could see between 1 and 1.5 thousand initially devices all scanning for this port. But then the numbers started climbing. So between 4 and 4,000 devices per hour scanning for this. So this is usually typical of a concerted scanning effort and potentially even a botnet. You could see how quickly it ramped up here.
Yeah.
2.5, that's normally what we do see as devices become compromised or infected. So this is definitely something to keep an eye on. We're not quite sure what it is yet, but it does seem like there are many devices, predominantly in Asia, that are scanning the internet for this port all of a sudden. So this is during an initial phase when this thing was just spreading. There was about 400 IP addresses. You could see that in Latin America and South America there's some hotspots, but mainly in Asia and a little bit there in Northern Africa and a little bit in India, I guess. But a lot of the activity seems to be coming from Asia, China region. It could be because I don't know what this is, but maybe the types of devices that are vulnerable to this just happen to be in Asia, and maybe some get sold to these areas as well. At a later point in time, you could see there's many more devices impacted, and you could see that China really starts, as the worm is spreading, or as this problem is spreading potentially, there's many more devices that are implicated, and it really does seem to be emanating and concentrating in China. I also did a little bit of a study of Shodan, just to see these IP addresses, what are they, what kind of ports are they listening to. Sometimes that's helpful because you can get a sense of, well, these are all cameras or these are something else. But in this case, I couldn't find a clear pattern. So I took random IP addresses and tried them, and there was no pattern that emerged. Some weren't listening on any port that Shodan knew about. Others were listening on common IoT ports. So it seemed to be inconclusive in that regard. So we'll have to keep an eye on this one, and hopefully it doesn't turn into something super evil. And that's it for this week's Internet Weather.
Thanks, Dan.